Are they the Pelicans or are they the Pelicanots? That's my question. I'm going to tell you why I think this Pelicans team is actually pretty solid. But let's get into it. My name's Adam. We're doing a New Orleans Pelicans video today about their season, their upcoming season. Do a little preview of that. We're going to be talking about these 4 things right here. Offseason moves, salary cap sheet, rotations, and what Vegas says their win total will be. Before we get into it, feel free to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment, all this fun stuff. We're doing some good stuff over here on the channel. Feel free to subscribe again. It's we'll have a good time, and we like to interact with our comments. So, but let's get into this. Let's just forget the self-plug, and let's just get into it. Pelicans. Let's talk about their off-season. So the Pelicans had an interesting off-season. They had a year where there were some big decisions I think that needed to be made with the team, and I don't know if I'm crazy about it. Let's break it down though. Devontae Graham, they got from the Hornets, sign and trade. They traded away, they traded for Jonas Valanciunas, Thomas Satoransky, and Garrett Temple. In these trades, they gave up Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, Lonzo Ball, and then they also lost Wes Iwundu and James Johnson as well. And they drafted really solid. I actually liked their draft. I gave them an A as far as their draft goes. As Trey Murphy's really solid. Apparently there are rumors that are talking about him potentially starting. Like they believe in him that much. Okay, good stuff. Herb Jones as well. I like Herb Jones, Alabama. I think out of Alabama, I think he probably make an impact in a couple of years, but still pretty raw. Kind of old, but I like him. So yes, I was a big hater on the whole Devontae Graham signing. They basically are now like replacing Devontae Graham they're replacing Devontae Graham. Get it together. They are replacing Lonzo Ball with Devontae Graham. So when they do that, obviously you're going to lose some defensive stuff. Offensively, I think you're a little bit better, but how much better, right? So I worry about the team in that regard as far as the point guard situation. But when we get into rotations, we'll talk a little bit about how what we've heard in the offseason, it kind of might smooth over those issues that I have with point guard. Valanciunas, I think, was a good pickup. We'll just kind of have to see if he's like that key piece of unlocking Zion in a way. I don't know how well that works on the basketball court. Like Jonas can hit threes, but it's not like you can have him just primarily play on the perimeter. So that will be a little interesting to see what happens there. And then Satoransky, I think, is a really solid point guard, but he's a reserve guy. I don't think you can throw him in there and say, hey, you need to start for us. And then Garrett Temple's a good veteran, good teammate for the team moving forward. Let's move over actually to our salary cap situation for the Pelicans. So Brandon Ingram is their guy. Obviously, you can see if you're watching on YouTube that his cap number is really good, or I should say his cap number is the highest on the team. I think Ingram's solid. I think they did right by keeping him. Let's move on. Valanciunas, I talked about this in the Memphis Grizzlies video that I did. I don't understand exactly what the whole lure of trying to get Jonas was, because you have to pay him, right? You trade for a player who's entering an expiring year. The agent's going to come out and say, like, hey, you got to pay for us. Like, you paid Eric Bledsoe and Steven Adams. Like, you gave that up in order to get us. So re-sign us, right? So interesting. I think that's going to be a real story going into the offseason next year is like, do you pay a lot of money to Jonas? Like, especially when your team needs better players? Like, I don't know. Josh Hart also got extended last season in the offseason. Pretty solid there. Not crazy about the money, but it works. It is what it is. Devontae Graham comes in. His money is pretty solid too, and like nothing huge, nothing too like crazy out of this world. I think it's fine. Zion's on the team still, obviously expecting a big year from him as they're planning on playing him at the point guard position a little bit more. And we'll see what happens there. Satoransky, Jackson Hayes is still a solid center for them. Garrett Temple, Kira Lewis, and then Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Let me talk about them during our rotations thing so we don't delay this more than we need to. Willie Hernan Gomez, Trey Murphy, Didi Lazauda. Some good stuff, right? End of the day, like, let's go back. This team doesn't have a horrible contract on their books. You know, there's no Davis Bertans here in New Orleans. There's only, you know, you paid your guy in Ingram, and, you know, if you want to like debate, like, oh, Devontae Graham's maybe a little too long of a year, like too long of a contract year-wise, like, okay, maybe. But other than that, like, the contracts look nice. The question is talent and how it works on the floor. So let's talk about the rotations here. So according to Hoops Hype, this is what the projected starting lineup would look like for the Pelicans this upcoming season. And it is the following. It is Thomas Satoransky, Devontae Graham, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Jonas Valanciunas. I think that's a good starting five. I have heard, and we'll get into this talk now, that Kira Lewis and Nickeil Alexander-Walker are the two players that David Griffin, the GM of this team, is really, really high on. And high on like Zion. So I just really am interested to see if they'll throw Satoransky out at the beginning and then they'll move Temple or Alexander Walker into the point guard role for the future. But they're high on both of those guys. And I think at the end of the year, this probably is Kira Lewis, Nickeil Alexander Walker next to Zion, Brandon Ingram, and Valanciunas. So the reserves, though, are Garrett Temple, who they put as a point guard. I don't know why. Nickeil Alexander Walker, Josh Hart, Najee Marshall, Jackson Hayes. So they have some nice youth on their roster. And this is where I kind of hold back on my expectations of them getting like to the top 7 of the West, because I think there is a little bit of youth. But here's the interesting thing about the Pelicans. Their offensive numbers with the 5 dudes on the floor of Graham, Ingram, Zion, Valanciunas, and I think I put in Alexander Walker. I think. But that 5 players, they would be one of the better offensive teams as far as points per possession go and as far as their effective field goal percentage goes. Now, obviously, the situation with Jonas is different because he didn't play with this team last year. So does his percentages or numbers take any kind of a dip playing next to Zion? Maybe. But it'll be an interesting team nonetheless. I think this team is really good offensively. The only issue that I see with the Pelicans is the whole culture that's there in New Orleans. Like, there's a lot of friction in the front office with Griffin kind of as the head man there. The ownership is not really like too invested in this team to like demand anything. They have a rookie head coach in Willie Green. And then they also just have a defensive problem where like players just don't want to play defense. Zion doesn't look interested in playing defense. And so if that doesn't change, this team's going to have a really hard time winning in shootouts because they're just going to give up so many points. There'll be games that they win because they're just offensively on all just great in all facets of the game. But I think this team struggles at the beginning of the season. Maybe they make some changes and then they kind of get rolling. But I have them at the 9th seed right now for the season for the Western Conference. But let's talk about their win total now, because their win total is a little crazy. So Memphis is actually getting 41 wins, right? We mentioned that in another video. If you're coming from that video, cool, subscribe to the channel. But Memphis is at 41, and New Orleans is actually here, as you see on screen, 38.5 wins. So Vegas is saying we think Memphis is going to be better than New Orleans. I don't see that. Again, a lot of youth for both sides. I think the better player resides in New Orleans with Zion. And while there is the rookie head coach and there are defensive issues, I think the offensive peak that the Pelicans can reach this year are better than what Memphis can do on either side of the basketball. I think you look at just kind of like, okay, who are the best offensive teams in the league going to be? Well, it's these teams. And their peak of what they can do offensively is better than the peak of maybe what another team can do defensively, right? If that makes sense. So I think defensively, probably Memphis is better. But I think the peak of the offense that the Pelicans can run is better than the offense of Memphis and is better than the defense of Memphis. and what their peaks could be. So I'll take New Orleans. Again, I could really flip on both of them, but I will give them 41 to 42 wins. I think them in Memphis will really battle most of the year as far as who's going to get into the play-in and who's not, or who is going to get the 9 and the 10, where I have it here. So it is what it is. But we will see what the Pelicans can do this year. I think they're a fun, interesting team. Obviously, this whole Zion experiment with him at the point guard is going to be really interesting to see this year. That's all I got to say on the Pelicans. One last video tonight. If you're new to the channel, if you're new to these videos, feel free to comment on the videos. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm right. Tell me why Zion's going to go win MVP and Devontae Graham's going to win Most Improved Player of the Year or anything like that. So comment on the video. Subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next one.